Zhang Yi and his team had finally figured out a way to deal with the Zombie King and his army of undead, hoping to eliminate most of them at the very least in one fell swoop. At this moment when Zhang Yi heard what Chunlei said, he unusually replied, Zhang Yi just want to leave you a surprise. Hearing this Chunlei, Lian Yu and Uncle Yu were speechless. That statement coming from you doesn't sound convincing at all. However, they also knew Zhang Yi was not the type of person to act rashly. Without a considerable amount of thought about his safety, he was always willing to use any means to achieve his ends. Not rashly telling them about his spatial teleportation beforehand, he must have his reasons, so the group didn't dwell on further questions on that particular matter. But Zhang Yi continued anyway, explaining that at the beginning he didn't think of the opportunity to really use this ability. This time the zombie crisis which we encountered was completely different from what we did face since it broke out. It is more complicated than we all could have imagined. So far I don't know how it will develop in the end. Hearing Zhang Yi's analysis made Uncle Yu ask what they should do next. Hearing Uncle Yu's question, Zhang Yi didn't answer immediately, but took out a lit cigarette from his alternate space, slowly took a drag while thinking, then as he let it out after a considerable thought, he said, no matter what, we must solve this problem and solve it as soon as possible. We cannot give these zombies any more room to grow. So what can we do? Liang Yu asked in earnest. As Zhang Yi shook off the smoked part of his cigarette, he turned towards them and said, getting rid of these zombies could actually be not as difficult as we imagined. Even if the virus is very cold resistant, the zombies will not stay in such low temperatures outside. He then crouched down with a piece of white chalk in his hand, illustrating his plan in the snowy ground. The regional subway line where we are located is not complicated, and there is only one substantial line passing through it. These zombies usually sleep in tunnels, and as Zhang Yi made an X, marking a spot in his diagram, he continued, right now there is only one thing that can control all the zombies in the tunnel in the shortest possible time, and then seal it up. Curious and anxious, Liang Yu asked what the marked spot meant. That's seawater. Hearing this sparkled what Zhang Yi was getting at in Liang Yu's mind. It seemed she was finally catching on to Zhang Yi's idea. Immediately she loudly clasped her hands upon realization. Wonderful, wonderful, this trick is really wonderful. Liang Yu also crouched down, joining Zhang Yi on the ground, then using her finger to illustrate in the snowy ground. Liang Yu continued that the secondary channel line is a one-way line. As long as your different space can accommodate enough seawater, the entire tunnel can be submerged. The underground tunnel is so deep, the rats and zombies inside would be submerged by the water by then. At least it can solve most of them. If the Zombie King was really alive, he would probably be drowned to death. Even in the worst-case scenario, they would have no way to survive in the tunnel. Hearing Liang Yu's explanation made Chunlei beam with realization, so as he clenched his fist in excitement, he added, this is the reason why you are the boss. Your superpower is too buggy, and as of now it just became the best weapon to deal with these zombies at this time. Uncle Yu was in all smiles as he joined in. I think the most powerful thing is Zhang Yi's mind. Although each of us has superpowers, Zhang Yi is the one who uses his superpower to the fullest potential. Seeing everyone beaming with excitement made Flower meow with joy, although he didn't fully comprehend anything. Hearing this, Zhang Yi got up, and as he did, he added that this plan of his just came to mind, but the specifics and implementation still requires a lot of preparation. Also, there was a very critical issue, so he needs to hurry back and consult the professionals and technical personnel at home. Zhang Yi said this as he took out his vehicle from his alternate space, approached it and told everyone to get in. They needed to get to the shelter as soon as possible. The sooner this plan of his was implemented, the better. On the way, he expressed the urgency of the matter, adding that they needed to speed up and not give those zombies any chance to continue to grow, like it all. Meanwhile, at Radiant Prosperity-based Xiao Honglian together with her assistant Zhuge Qinting watch a recorded video sent by Dong Hu before his death. The video had confirmed their suspicions all along. First, the number of undead creatures were simply unfathomable. Second, there was undoubtedly someone controlling the zombies from the shadows. Looking a bit uneasy, Zhuge Qinting said, I didn't expect such a monster to exist underground. If they all rushed out, even if our current base is fully armed, there will be no way to stop them. He then turned his gaze towards Xiao Honglian and asked, should we consider moving underground? Hearing the question, Xiao Honglian, although she knew that there was a high probability that they might lose the refinery and move underground, she was also resolved in her decision to defend the refinery to the bitter end. This is absolutely impossible. If we lose the refinery, we will lose the foundation of our existence. No matter how high the price is, the refinery must be saved. This made Zhuge Qinting ask her another question. If the zombies really came to eliminate us all, how do we stop them? Xiao Honglian suggested they take the oil in storage and dump it around the refinery. As soon as those zombies come over, we will light the oil and burn them all. Zhuge Qinting pushed up his glasses and analyzed. If that's the case, then we might as well let the soldiers' families go underground first, so that even if something goes wrong with us, someone will be there. Xiao Honglian just laid back in her chair and told Juga Qinting to do just as he is told and nothing more. Meanwhile at this moment Zhang Yi and his team arrived at the shelter. Seeing their safe arrival, Zhou Qi was the first to welcome them back. Then she immediately went to prepare for Zhang Yi a cup of hot coffee. In the lounging hall, Zhang Yi sat on the sofa to rest. As Zhou Qi, holding a tray with a cup of coffee, asked what happened. Are you in trouble? I'm all right. It's true that we encountered a little trouble, but it won't be a big problem. Zhang Yi said this to ease Zhou Qi's worries. As he took the cup of hot coffee at that moment Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen came in. Big brother, how did the operation go? Asked Yang Xinxin. Seeing them, Zhang Yi told them to come over. He had a very important question to ask the two of them. Hearing this Yang Xinxin told Zhang Yi, Big brother, if you have any questions just ask. I need a way to freeze seawater quickly, and a very large amount of seawater at that. Do you have any good ideas? Lu Karen was the first to speak up. Of course there's a method. You just need to simply prepare some chemical materials. Curious about Zhang Yi's sudden question about seawater made Lu Karen ask, Big brother, why do you need to make a large amount of seawater freeze? Hearing this, Zhang Yi, expecting this question, replied with a knowing look, I need to freeze an entire subway line, more than 20 kilometers long. Zhang Yi continued pondering, the kind and the degree of what I want will not be difficult, but it required time to prepare. Indeed it would be easy to do and only requires some very simple chemical material, Lu Karen said. Hearing this, Zhang Yi was delighted. That's great. In terms of time we are actually not in that much of a hurry. Hearing this, Lu Karen gave a thumbs up, beaming with excitement. Great. I would prepare a lot of coagulant. The materials we found in the chemical factory at West Mountain Base just happened to come in handy this time. Well then let's take action this afternoon, and go get seawater together. Zhang Yi replied with a matching enthusiasm. The very next day, Zhang Yi and his group set out to drain a large amount of seawater. They quickly made their way to the edge of the East China Sea, and from the looks of it, the seashore had been frozen all the way up to a considerable amount of distance of what the eye could see. It was impossible to see the portion of the sea not frozen from the shore, so as they drove on the icy portion of the sea, Lian Yu was in awe seeing this. So beautiful, is this the miraculous workmanship of nature? Witnessing the stunning scenery, Uncle Yu added that comparing Heavenly Sea City with a place like this, the ice surface in Heavenly Sea City in winter absolutely pales in significance. Hearing everyone's praise, Zhang Yi told everyone that this was not the time to lament. There was no time to remiss also. They had to drive over and see where they could get water. After 2 hours of driving on the icy portion of the sea, the group finally reached their destination where there was seawater. Excited, Chunlei pointed at the distance ahead. Boss, water. I see seawater. Zhang Yi cautioned everyone, we need to be careful and quick about this. We'll leave immediately after collecting the water. The vehicle was parked a few meters away from the portion of the sea unfrozen, and as they approached, Zhang Yi without hesitation opened the double door of his alternate space, and immediately upon doing so, the water suddenly started rushing in without an end. Rubbing his freezing hands together, Uncle Yu mentioned that, if he had known he would have brought a fishing rod there, fishing in a place like this would have been a wonderful thing. Hearing this gave Zhang Yi an idea, so as he turned to look at Uncle Yu, he said, when you put it that way, it's just gave me an idea. Let's build a fish pond at home, and then we can put some marine fish in it. What do you think? Zhang Yi asked this as he began to drain aquatic life into his alternate space. As well, Chunlei walked up to Zhang Yi's side, nudged him a little and said with his usual playful demeanor, Boss, how about we consider building a house here in the future? He then clasped his hands hoping, Chunlei hoped that maybe, just maybe Morning Dew Base gets directly wiped out by the zombies, and when that time comes, they could occupy their base and their ships, and with their resources they could still go out to sea for a long journey. Hearing this, Zhang Yi glanced at Chunlei with a faint smirk. Let's consider how to solve the current problem first. However, the ocean-going ships at Morning Dew Base are indeed something I am very coveted. Then after collecting a sufficient amount of seawater, Zhang Yi turned around and gave the order to head back. The preliminary preparations were almost complete. Everyone complied as they head back to the car. Chunlei was a bit fired up about finally dealing with the zombies. Unbeknownst to everyone, a huge fish like the size of a submarine lurked just beneath the surface. Back at the shelter, Zhang Yi paid a visit at Lu Karen's workspace at the underground level. I have collected the seawater and the next step is to let it settle. Are your materials ready? It's not a very special material as you might think. It's actually easy to prepare. These are precipitants. If you put them into seawater they can quickly precipitate salt from the seawater. Lu Karen said this as she showed Zhang Yi 24 blue plastic containers. Zhang Yi crouched down and opened one container to check its content. Lu Karen continued that only when the salt content is relatively low can seawater freeze relatively quickly at low temperatures. As for these being fully prepared, it will take at least 2 days. Hearing this, Zhang Yi responded, well, we can still afford to wait for only 2 days.